Hi, Garland Nixon here. And Mark Zuckerberg, when asked about Hunter Biden's laptop gate and the FBI, basically said, I was only following orders. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and let's talk. So let's look at the latest thing that happened. Apparently, Mark Zuckerberg was on Joe Rogan or whatever. He was asked about the infamous Hunter Biden laptop gate. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. I'm going to add one thing to it. Hunter Biden's laptop, due to a number of reasons, came into the possession of a number of different organizations, people, groups, etc. And there was a tremendous amount of compromising, shall we say, information on that laptop. And at some point, just before the election, it got out into the mainstream press, and social media and mainstream press did a job of suppressing the information. And now there are questions as to why. And Caitlin Johnstone did a great article. We're going to look at that article. We're going to talk about that article and what it means. Let's go to the article. One of my favorite websites, consortiumnews.com. Caitlin Johnstone, FBI's muting of Hunter Biden story. Couple of things here. There's plenty to talk about on this, but let's start here with her tagline. Zuckerberg's deployment of algorithms to please the FBI is a glaring example of how billionaires and government work together to control information in an oligarchy. Well, you could put a slash in there. Billionaires / government, not billionaires and government. But they work together to control information in an oligarchy. And it makes sense. Think about this. Who would not want that Hunter Biden information out there, and why? Right? It was a laptop with Hunter Biden, a lot of bad stuff on there, him and all kind of sexually explicit crap going on. There was information regarding business deals he was doing. It clearly showed his decadent lifestyle, or I hate to use the word decadent because I don't want to seem like I'm, pious and better than anybody else. Let's just say his severely broken lifestyle, his lifestyle that runs afoul of the persona that is put on by the ruling elite class, that they and their progeny are a bunch of very moral and very intelligent people who are out there doing the best they can. Well, at any rate, no, we saw that, and the guy's nothing but cracking hookers all the way down. His lifestyle is cracking hookers. All the things that he does, it comes down to cracking hookers over and over and over again, right? That's Hunter Biden, cracking hookers. Those things go together. Okay, but let's look into this thing a little bit. What happens? Facebook restricting visibility of the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story in the lead up. So that's what we start off with. The whole key here is that Facebook is a social media company, and that it restricted visibility of an article from the New York Post about the Hunter Biden laptop, right? And they deliberately decided to do that. Excuse me. So the question is why? Why'd they do it? What was the reason for it? We know the answer. Here's the thing about it. I find this interesting. There are things in life that we all know the answers to, and people discuss them as though we don't know the answers. We know the answer, right? We know what happened. We know that it was Hunter Biden's laptop. We all knew that when it happened. We knew that the people who didn't want Donald Trump to win didn't want the laptop to get information to get out because they felt that it would be detrimental to Joe Biden's chance to win the presidency. So this was about stopping Donald Trump from winning the presidency. This was not about what was on it. It was not about whether it was true or false. It wasn't about the Russians or some foreign entity. That's all a fraud. All of us know the truth. It was true. They knew it was true. They were trying to suppress the information. This was election interference in its purest forms by the mainstream media, social media, and by the press. By the status quo said we got to stop Trump, and the rest was lies. So let's move on. He said they took a different path than Twitter. What he means is different degrees of the same path. So Zuckerberg is saying we took a different path. In other words, we did something different than Twitter. No, Twitter completely banned it, banned everything, shut your account down if you tried to share it. Where they just used, Facebook used algorithms to kind of edit it out of the conversation. So one side, so he said we took a different path. No, both social media companies took action to inhibit the spread of this information. They use different degrees. For instance, one guy says, I will yell at you to stop you from doing X. The other person says, I will shoot you to stop you from doing X. Both of them use coercive measures to stop you from doing X. There were different degrees of those coercive measures. That's all it was. He didn't take a different path than Twitter. Let's go on. So he says the background, and it's important for us to read this. Here is the FBI. I think basically came to us, some folks on our team, and it was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. Well, he sure is awful murky. But so he says the FBI came to them, to some people on his team, and said, you should be on high alert. That we thought there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. Well, it's funny that all of the so-called Russian propaganda in the 2016 election that they put forward always fell apart. Every bit of Russiagate that was put forward crashed. So they said, remember those allegations we made in 2016 that all came up to be false? Yes. Well, we think they're back. Well, they are back because they were nothing but allegations. The whole Russiagate thing was not about Russia, and it was not about Trump. Well, the two things that we didn't find in Russiagate allegations was Russia or Trump. What we found was that the FBI literally had someone prosecuted for lying about Russiagate. Okay, so let's go on. Zucker, and this is what I love. You know, as I've said many times before, I was in law enforcement. I was the commander of the investigations division. I trained people, interrogation. I trained people, things like that, interview and interrogation. I taught that course, stuff like that. And I pick up things like this. Listen to this. This is obvious when you're doing statement analysis. Zuckerberg said a decision was made to restrict the information. A decision. Think about this. You know what it's like? You're interviewing someone and they're saying yes. And the gun went off and then he was shot. The gun went off. The gun went off. Was it in somebody's hand? Were they aiming it at the victim? Yes, the gun didn't go off. Somebody shot that guy. And now you're changing it to the gun went off. You're distancing yourself from the gun. You're distancing yourself from a decision. Well, the gun went off and the guy fell and a bullet struck him from the gun that went off. What you're taking out of that conversation is the gun was in your hand. You pointed it at that poor bastard. You pulled the trigger. So instead you go, the gun went off. It's an attempt to distance yourself, to almost make it like an inanimate object. So when you look at what Zuckerberg says, a decision was made to restrict that information on Facebook's. A decision was made. He's distancing himself from that decision. He's distancing the people who work for him from the decision. Now the decision is an inanimate object. Well, you guys decided to do that? Yes. Who? A decision was made. Who the hell made that decision? The decision made itself. Yeah, a decision was made. We didn't have any people involved in the decision. In fact, nobody did it. It's just that somewhere out there in space, a decision was made. But nobody made it that works for me. Nobody I know, nobody ever made a decision that works for me. Just that a decision was made. Yeah, that's bullshit. Statement analysis starts to pick up deception. If I'm doing statement analysis, I'm saying I'm picking up some form of either deception or an attempt to distance themselves from the action. What I see here is a decision was made means I'm distancing myself from that action. Why would you distance yourself from that action? Because you fear there could be repercussions for that action. So now I didn't make the decision. It was made. The distribution on Facebook was decreased, he said, adding, when pressed by Rogan, that the decreased visibility of the article happened to a meaningful extent. In other words, yeah, they cut it out completely. And he goes, and when you look at it, he goes on, As we've discussed previously, censorship. Okay, so censorship by algorithm is becoming the preferred censorship method. So the bottom line is this: Zuckerberg tries to say they did something different from Twitter. When they did the same thing, they just used a different. And here's the thing about it: what's the difference between saying you can't put this up and allowing people to put it up and do an algorithm so nobody can ever see it? It's the same thing, just a little bit of plausible deniability. We didn't go as far as they did. We just made sure nobody saw it. They just out and out came, and at least Twitter was honest. Hey, nobody can see it. Zuckerberg was like, sure, you can see it. Now set the algorithm so nobody could see it. I would almost prefer Twitter's method. So we go on. Hunter Biden laptop story was first ignored and dismissed by the mainstream news, then spun as a Russian disinformation operation. Now, here's the thing. Let's talk about the FBI a little bit. Let me get away from that. Let's talk about the FBI a little bit. I've said this before. I worked with the FBI when I was in law enforcement. I worked with the JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, right? And I can tell you, they ain't stupid. Everybody I worked with had postgraduate degrees, master's degrees, stuff like that. These guys were not stupid. They were not poorly educated. They were knowledgeable. Never fool yourself into, I've look, one of the games that I'll play again that I've learned for my, training and interview and interrogation is to feign ignorance. I didn't know what, I don't know what happened next. Always play ignorant. Right. And as you probably heard this before, a lawyer will never ask a question unless he already knows the answer. Right. You ask questions that you know the answers. You feign ignorance. I don't who, what, where, I don't never seen. I don't know. So the FBI has very educated, well-educated people with law degrees, people that literally are lawyers becoming FBI agents, forensic analysis degree, all kinds of degrees, psychology degrees, humanity degrees, you name it, masters, you name it in their FBI. But listen to this. But the second this thing came out, I knew that was Hunter Biden's laptop, and so did you. Everybody on this chat right now, let's be honest. The second that laptop came out and you're like, hey, let's see what's on the laptop. Holy shit, that guy, did he really put that on her ass? My God, he's smoking crack off of a hooker's butt. You're looking at all that stuff, and there's women, and like the guy's smiling, he's got snaggly teeth, looks like his tongue's in jail, and you're like, holy my, that's embarrassing. No, and there's like his emails in there, private embarrassing stuff in there. And they're like, yeah, who knows? Maybe that's not Hunter Biden's. Maybe it's somebody other guy named. Maybe there's another Hunter Biden. You ever think about that? Look online. I'm sure there's other Hunter Bidens that look just like him and happen to be going back and forth in Ukraine and happen to also like smoking crack and hanging out with hookers. Yeah, maybe it's not him. We knew it. We knew it. Like, for instance, they find a laptop, right? And it's got like all of Garland's stuff on it, everything, Garland doing, hey, my name's Garland. Hi, look at this. Hey, here's a hooker. Look at this crack. Think I'll smoke some, all this. And it's like, hey, Garland, is that your laptop? Who, me? Huh? What? No, it could be. I don't. Did you see Hunter Biden when they were interviewing? I forgot who was interviewing him. And they're like, is that your laptop? He's like, I don't know. I mean, did I ever smoke crack off a hooker's ass? It's not something that would stand out in my memory if I had done it, and are all those emails mine? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of emails that are mine that can be corroborated easier with other servers and other people? I don't know. It's possible. Probably not. I mean, it was Russian, those silly Russians always playing games. Maybe. You see, if it wasn't, Hunter would have said something like this. That's not mine. I've never seen that before in my life. I want a forensic analysis done of this thing. I want to find out who did this. This is some bullshit here. And I didn't do it. And I want to find out who did this. Somebody's going down. I'm filing lawsuits. I want a deep analysis done of this. That's what he would have said if it wasn't his. He wouldn't have been like, huh? Who? Me? What? Laptop? Oh, well, you? Me? He was like killing time, looking for anything to say, just blurting out words. Hey, is that your laptop? Laptop? Me, Hunter? You? Jane? Me? Tarzan? Yo, get the fuck out of here. How stupid do you have to be to believe that this guy didn't know it was his laptop and it was like all pictures of him and hookers, but he didn't know if it was his? So in other words, here's my point. I knew it was his without a forensic analysis. You knew it was his without a forensic analysis. He knew it was his. His crack dealer knew it was his. The hookers that were in there knew it was his. What, did anybody think about it? Hey, let's figure out if it is. I got an idea. Let's go interview these hookers. They can be found. Somebody knew who they were. In fact, they're probably calling the hookers. Hey, Svetlana. Yeah, you ain't going to believe this, but I just saw you on Newsmax the other day. Really? What happened? Well, you're still a hooker? Well, yeah, kind of really I am. Well, bad news. Hunter was filming everything, and it's kind of out there, right? Svetlana's like, yeah, well, what the hell? She's probably, sadly, she's probably a victim, and she's on drugs and all that stuff. And 14 years old, no doubt, knowing Hunter Biden. So at any rate, so that's where we are. That's where we are. The FBI, according to Zuckerberg, not that he would ever lie to us, according to him, the FBI, and I'm adding this part, knowing that was Hunter Biden's laptop, knowing goddamn well, sure, for friggin' to a moral certainty that was Hunter Biden's laptop, went to Zuckerberg and said, we don't know if it's Hunter Biden's laptop. What does that tell you? Why? Let's not beat around the bush. Why would the FBI, knowing that that's Hunter Biden's laptop, go to somebody and say, we don't think it's Hunter Biden's laptop, or we don't know if it's Hunter Biden's laptop? See, the question is not whether it's Hunter Biden's laptop. The question is not whether the FBI knew that it was Hunter Biden's laptop. How about this? The FBI had that hard drive for a year before they even admitted it. So did they know it was Hunter Biden's hard drive? They had it themselves, and they wouldn't tell anybody that they had it. So the FBI had that laptop. Are you going to tell me they had it for a year and they didn't look into it to see if it was authentic? That's not plausible. So we know that they had it, and we know that they knew it was his. The question now becomes, with the FBI having Hunter Biden's hard drive, knowing that it's Hunter Biden's hard drive, why would the FBI go to Zuckerberg and tell him we don't know if it's his? Why did the FBI lie to Zuckerberg? And that is taking into account that we believe Zuckerberg that he's telling the truth, as close to the truth as he can. He's ducking and dodging because he knows there could be lawsuits coming. So that's the question now. Why is the FBI lying and saying we don't know if it's Hunter's laptop when they know it is? Because obviously, if somebody lies, it is to deception. It is to conceal something. They want to conceal the information about Hunter Biden's laptop until after the election. Keep in mind something. This is the same FBI that when they were investigating Trump, the people who were investigating Trump were texting each other saying, Trump's got to lose, that we have an insurance plan to stop Trump from losing. Now, is it hard to believe that a so-called federal government law enforcement agency that was investigating a potential president and texting amongst themselves saying, we got to stop this guy from becoming president? That's what was going on. They were investigating a potential president as they texted themselves and said, we must stop him from becoming president. Is it a stretch to see that when that guy ran again, that they would take action to stop him a second time? And that knowing that the opponent's son had done things that could shed, shall we say, a harsh light on on the opponent, that they would take action. They took action. This was, let's be straightforward about it, this was election interference. This ain't about whether I wanted Trump to win or Biden to win. I can't stand either one of them as president. I don't want either one of those guys as president. Anybody that I would vote for couldn't get elected, or if they got elected, they'd kill them. We've seen that. The guy I liked, JFK. I mean, I wasn't around to vote for him, but I'm just saying, they killed him. He kind of started maybe doing some of the things that I think ought to be done. They kill him. That's what they do. So I'm not pretending this is a democracy. People are like, we've got to protect our democracy. I'm not foolish enough to believe there is one. But I think that we should expose the realities. We should expose the things that we see that show that we're not in a democracy. So the FBI had the laptop. At the time, they were going to the Zuckerberg saying, we don't know if it's valid. And wouldn't they just say we've looked into it and we're not sure or something? What took them so long? And finally they just said, yeah, we don't know what it is. So it might be Russian something or other. It was absurd. So let's still go. Let's look at this some more. So now we've made it clear. The FBI did an election interference campaign in 2016, and they did another one in 2020, twice. They were successful in one. They weren't successful in the other. All right, let's keep going. And here's a couple of questions. How many of the okay, and we now know the reason the world's largest social media platform censored that particular story was because they were cautioned by the FBI against allowing such information to circulate. Keep in mind, and the FBI knew that it was valid information, right? How often are U.S. government agencies involving themselves in the act of censorship? Well, you know what? Let me do this. Let me see if I can do this. No, you know what? I think she has it here. I think she has it further down. Let's go to, and we will do this together, Mint Press News, and see if we can find. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a couple of things you need to look at. Look at this. Leaked documents, Facebook bot advisors secretly in the pay of U.S. regime change agency. I mean, we could go on and on and on where we find. Let's look at this. Mint Press. National Security Search Engine. Google's ranks are filled with CIA agents, right? Look at this. How the CIA has infiltrated social media companies with Alan McLeod. If you look at this, he literally has names. Meet the ex-CIA agents deciding Facebook's content policy. Look at this. He has names. Aaron Berman, Deborah B. These are people who work for Meta. Trust and Safety, Cameron Harris, right? Former CIA. He works on trust and safety. Look at this. Deborah B. Trust and Safety at Meta, former CIA. Look at here. Aaron Berman, Misinformation Policy at Meta, former CIA. Okay? How's this? Joey Chan, Program Manager, Trust and Safety at Meta, blah, blah, blah. United States Military Academy at West Point. U.S. Army Company Commander. United States Military Academy. On and on and on. So here's what you see. Bottom line, is that do I have to continue on there? So what you see is trust and safety. It should be mistrust and lies, but that's what we're looking at. Okay, so let's continue. The media outlets eventually came around to admitting that the leaked emails were probably authentic, and Hunter Biden tacitly admitted them himself when he acknowledged that the information could have come from his laptop. Nothing that we know from the laptop was as scandalous as the unified front presented by the news media in Silicon Valley in reducing the political impact. And he says, now we know, she says, that the reason the world's largest social media platform censored that particular story was because they were cautioned by the FBI. And add this, and the FBI knew at the time that they told Facebook not to run that story. They knew it was true. It was deliberate election interference. They said the opposite of what they knew. The FBI acted for political reasons to influence the election. Do not be misled. There ain't no way around that. That's what happened. And how many people do you know that you can talk to that worked with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force? I did. I met with the FBI. I've been in meetings with them, regular meetings. I worked with them. I worked on a project here in Maryland with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, FBI, all of those when I was in law enforcement. So I can tell you, they're not stupid. Don't fool yourself. They're not idiots. They're smart, educated people, and they knew what the hell they were doing. And let me add this. Let me add this. Let me see if there's anything else. Let me add this. Whoops. The FBI, even there, they weren't at the top of the food chain. The FBI wasn't them. You think they were the only ones? You think they just like by themselves sat around in a room and said, "Let's do this," or do you think this was a coordinated effort? It was. I mean, think about it. An article came out. I believe it was in the Hill, and it had like 51 former uh, intelligence officers who said that the Hunter Biden story had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. When you read the story, it was, I mean, you had to be an idiot not to see that that was a piece of shit. You had to be a person who wanted to believe that already. You already wanted to believe it, so they just gave you something to believe what you already wanted to believe. And the other thing that story, which was garbage, did and when you read it, it was like, we don't have any information. We don't have any evidence. However, and we're not going to tell you what those earmarks are. We're not going to go through the story and say this, but we're going to say the Hunter Biden story has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, and here's 51 people with their names signed. And in logical fallacies, it was the fallacy of authority, right? An authority. Well, all of these people are authorities. Now, I don't have any evidence to say this is Russian disinformation. I have nothing, zero. But what I do have is 51 people who are authority figures based on the fact that authority figures said it, you should believe it. That's all it was. It was a logical fallacy, the fallacy of an appeal to authority. Hey, why should I believe that the Hunter laptop gate story is Russian disinformation? Because I have 51 people, all of who are highly administrative people with histories in the intelligence community, all saying it. No evidence for you, but I got 51 names. I'm going to appeal to that authority. And Garland Nixon looked at it and said, I know I don't believe that now. If those lying bastards have said it, then it has to be a lie. That was my position. But for the average schmuck out here, they look at it and they're like, well, I guess it must be true. They got all of these people who have they ever lied to us? The truth is, have they ever told us the truth? So, but what was that story about? It was cover. It was cover. It was building on something. It was in the same way that what Dick Cheney would do, he would leak a story about WMDs to Jane, what's her name, over at the New York Times. And then she would write the story. And then Dick Cheney would say, aha, I've got evidence. Why? There's a story right there by what's her name. So he'd give her the story, she'd write the story, and then he'd use the story as his evidence, right? That's the same way. The FBI comes, they put a bunch of people together, they write a bullshit story, and then they put that story out there. Then they go around and they say, well, it's got to be Russian disinformation. Why? Did you see that story with the 51 people? You put that story in. You put the story out. The story went out, and then once the story is out, then you use the story as your evidence that it's true. That's the game. We all know it. So what does this all boil down to? What did Malcolm X say? You're being had, you're being took, lied to, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, misled, on and on and on. It comes down to this. The FBI is a bunch of lying bastards. When Garland Nixon looked at them and they invaded the Uhuru African Socialist Party, I looked at it and I said, that's the FBI that I know. They're lying bastards, and they're just the Uhuru movement has been doing the same damn thing, which they have a constitutional right to do. And they've been doing it for the last 50 years. Now, all of a sudden, you guys walk up and say, oh, yeah, sure. But now they're doing it for Russia. Well, who are they doing it the last 49 and a half years? It makes no sense. But that was something you could do because you hate socialists, even though people have a right to whatever political ideology they have under the Constitution. If they want to have a socialist party, they can have it. And I believe in the Constitution, although the FBI doesn't. The government, that's the difference in this country. The people believe in the Constitution. The government knows it's bullshit because they're the ones who would be required to act in accordance with the Constitution and practice it. And they ain't doing that. So which means there's no Constitution if the government won't buy it. Right? When they went after them, I'm like, guys, you better wake up. There's some other people next. And there was a bunch of people on the right. Ah, they're socialists. Ah, yeah, right. And then what did they say when they're in Mar-a-Lago knocking on Trump's door? Oh my God, the FBI. Oh, who didn't see that coming? If you're only, I'll say this again, if you only believe in the Constitution when it affects people that you agree with, and you will allow the Constitution to be shredded against your adversaries or enemies or people who you have ideological differences with, and you don't believe it in the first place. So let me continue. So what we got is an FBI that's just a corrupt, you know what it is? It's like when you go to a banana republic, which we are a banana republic without the bananas, and they have a ministry of security, a ministry of government security or ministry. That's all they are. That's all they are. They are there to maintain what the people in charge want, to make sure the right person gets elected, to make sure the right person doesn't get elected, to make sure the right person's party is working out, to make sure the wrong people's party isn't working out. The FBI is there for political reasons. They are a political entity. Most people don't know. When the government overthrew, the U.S. government overthrew the government of Ukraine, what did they do? What's one of the first things that happened? Jim Comey went there and he opened up NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. An anti-corruption bureau in the most corrupt country on earth, and they couldn't find any corruption with Hunter Biden. They couldn't really find any corruption with the bio research labs. They couldn't find any They couldn't find corruption. They were there in the most corrupt country in the world, but because they weren't looking for corruption, they were looking for enemies to smite. When Donald Trump called Zelensky and said, I think Biden is up to no good, I'd like you to do an investigation, he was right. And they knew he was right. That's why they impeached him. Not because he was wrong, but because he was sniffing around somewhere where the bodies were actually buried. And they had to stop him. It had to be stopped. And they had to send a message to everybody. You can do a lot of things, but don't you ever, as long as you live, ever bring up corruption from the ruling elite class, because that's what we do. That's how we eat. You're trying to take food out of our mouths, man. You're trying to take food out of our mouths. That ain't going to be had. And so now you know who the FBI is. And hopefully some of the conservatives have woken up, waking up, whatever. Hopefully they ain't sleep anymore. Now, I don't have any confidence that tomorrow, if the FBI raids the Joe's Socialist Party, that the conservatives are going to go, I don't agree with that. They got to, no, the socialists, the Republicans are going to be, yeah, I hate socialists. Good job, FBI. Now, you were right going after those people, but Trump, you were wrong. I mean, the inconsistency, again, if you're a member of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, you're a brainwashed cult member. So do I expect brainwashed cult members to do anything other than be brainwashed and act like cult members? I think the question answers itself. Okay, so I don't look for people in either of the parties to wake up tomorrow and say, yeah, the FBI is bad. The FBI is good when it's going after my enemies. It's bad when it's going after me. There's no consistency there. Well, that is consistency, isn't it? I always support my interests, and I will go after anybody who opposes my interests. But it's not the kind of consistency that comes from having a moral and ethical compass that says, I believe certain things are right or wrong. I'm going to support certain things. I believe in a system that has, rather than arbitrary application of the law, rule of law, right? That's a whole different thing. Now, what we're looking at now is a situation where I think they've gotten to the point where the FBI and these groups that they're like, yeah, we're crooked. Kind of, yeah, really. And you know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. And we can't really hide it anymore. So we might as well just go all out. Come on. We're crooked. We know we're crooked. Everybody knows we're crooked. What are we going to do? Try to pretend like we're straight? I think that's where the FBI is. I mean, you got to respect them a little bit for that. When it gets to the point where they're so crooked that they're like, let's lay our cards on the table, guys. Yeah, we're the ministry of of control, and we smite the enemies of the status quo. And we constantly violate the law and the Constitution. We have no respect for rule of law or Constitution. We're the FBI. That's who we are. That's who we are. Nothing personal. It's not you. It's just us. Like a breakup. It wasn't you. It was me. That's the FBI now. You got to kind of respect for the FBI now that they've got to the point where they're just straight out political tools for the Biden administration. It is what it is what it is, but we can see it right in front of our face. Boom, there you go. Where's the FBI? Right there. They're political tools for the Biden administration. And I even said that wrong. Let me tell you why. If the status quo turns on Joe Biden tomorrow, which I suspect they're going to wait till after the election, and let's just say the Democrats will get creamed, which they should probably get creamed. But the way things are going, there's voting machines out there. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying anything about the election. I'm just saying one could question one who it always has. I'll say this. I'll say what I've always said. I've always questioned the integrity of the voting machine simply because very early, I live just outside of Baltimore, between Baltimore and DC, and in beautiful Chesapeake Bay country. And I remember John Hopkins did something when the voting machines first came out to show how easy it was, like a 15-year-old child or something hacked into one of these voting machines in like 15 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. It was nuts. In other words, so in theory, could the Democrats win? Yeah, in a blowout. There are those who would be suspicious about it. But if nature takes its course, the Democrats are going to get pounded. And you know what they look for? Scapegoats. And it could be Joe Biden. They could get pounded and they could say, okay, head's got to roll. Joe Biden, well, his head could roll and he won't even know it. So, hey, let's, we'll grab Joe Biden. We'll meander him out to the Rose Garden, sit him in a chair. We'll tell him he's still president. He won't really know. We'll just say, you're still president. Just make some decisions. And they'll have like fake news conferences and stuff like that. Joe will not know. He won't know. He'll do the best he can. So, and then there you go, Kamala Harris. Doesn't that sound inviting? President Kamala Harris. That's what. Think about this. Think about this. Kamala Harris, and this is the meeting, and the UK's leader, Liz Truss. Think about that. Between the two of them, what do you think their IQ is? Between the two of them. I mean, it's almost good to know that they won't actually be making the decisions, that they would be puppets for somebody, because God help us if they are puppets for somebody. God help us if they ain't. Kamala Harris and Liz Truss, think about that. I wouldn't want the two of them running a McDonald's. I wouldn't want either of them as a head manager for any fast food restaurant. But somehow we're supposed to believe that they can run the US and the UK. Okay, that's cool. Oh, back we go to the FBI. Back to the FBI. So that's where we are. We now know going into 2022 midterms and 2024 elections, we now know that the status quo, such as it is, has a police security agency that is intertwined with the media and is intertwined with social media in a way that they will do everything they can to affect the election. That, in my opinion, this whole Trump thing, all of this stuff, January 6th, clearly, that whole January 6th hearings and meetings and the whole production of that, and now the whole production of the Trump thing, all of that stuff, to me, in my opinion, is political wrangling, and it's the FBI being used. I mean, think about it. Come on. How can they form their mouths after what happened with Hillary Clinton and her server? How can they form their mouths to argue that they are acting on behalf of classified documents, that they are maintaining the integrity of the government by ensuring that classified documents are kept in a legal manner? And I mean, think about after what happened with Hillary and the server. It's not a plausible argument to claim that they're just standing up for democracy and for the integrity of the system. No, they clearly acted to defend Hillary. They clearly did everything they could up to and including illegal activities. They worked across multiple nations. They worked with the British. They worked with the Italian. They worked with the Ukrainians. They worked with the Australians. All of these, it's pretty much documented that they worked together on the 2016 election to the detriment of Donald Trump. And remember, I don't have a horse in this race because nobody that I voted for could or would win. right? I think they're all a bunch of, imperialists. They're all a bunch of warmongers. They're all nuts. Some worse than others, some to higher degrees, but none of them would do anything. They're all a bunch of neoliberals, Trump included. He's a neoliberal, gigantic tax cuts for the rich. That's what the neoliberals are all going to do. But the key being that now we know that the government uses everything, including the FBI, the CIA was involved, and on and on. And if that's the case, you don't think they're using the um, uh, uh, um, IRS? You don't think they're using everything they can now? Because this is about 2024 with Trump. How can we stop Trump from running? And I don't see how they can, to be quite frank, for this reason. Eugene Debs, he ran from prison. Eugene Debs ran and he got almost 1 million votes. He ran as the social in 2020. He was put in prison for pushing back against World War I. And he was given, I forgot how many years, I think he served 3, but he ran from prison as the Socialist Party's nominee, which he had a legal right to do. Why? Because the Constitution makes clear what the criteria for running for president is. So you can't add this Espionage Act and this and all these other kind of things. The Constitution says if you meet these standards, you can run for president. Eugene Debs was in jail, but he met those standards. Donald Trump can meet those standards, because this is not about Donald Trump doing something wrong. This is about the system being afraid. After all they've done now, how can they have Donald Trump become president and start to bring in people and want his revenge and bring in people that will take some of these people out and put a whole different group in? So the reality is, no, this is not. I'm saying this. If this is what you learn, don't learn from this if you don't learn anything else. This is not a democracy. You do not choose. This is not a democracy. If this was a democracy, the government would not be acting to influence. The U.S. government and entities involved and related to the U.S. government would not be acting to influence the election and change the outcome. If this were a democracy, this ain't a democracy. Don't forget, Jeremy Corbyn said one of the people in the British military made the statement, if Jeremy Corbyn wins, we will have to take concrete action. I don't know if the word was concrete, but in other words, the military of the UK said if Jeremy Corbyn wins, we'll stop him. Remember, Mike Pompeo said something similar, that if they thought Corbyn would win, they wouldn't wait around for that to happen. In other words, the UK does not see. That was the key then. The people in the UK should have realized then they don't have any independence and sovereignty, number one, but number two, that they don't have any democracy whatsoever. That's done. There's no democracy here. Let me finish up by saying this. I'm going to do a video about this. See, here's something you need to understand about this. I'm going to end up by saying this, and this is a powerful point. At the end of World War II, what happened? There was an agreement. The Soviets were honest. The Soviets said, we're going to take Eastern Europe. We're going to have hegemonic power over Eastern Europe. It's ours. This ain't going to be a democracy. They're going to do what we tell them to do. That's going to be part of our country. And the U.S., your side is this. And this was the agreement. The U.S. gets Western Europe. It can have its hegemonic desires fulfilled by owning Western Europe. So there it was. They made an agreement. You take Western Europe, I'll take Eastern Europe. Okay, but here is the difference. The Soviets were honest and said, this ain't a democracy. We got this. You're ours now. You got to do what we say. However, the U.S., because it was a fraud, had to say to Western Europe, here's what they forget to say to Western Europe. What they had to do is they had to continue the illusion of democracy in Western Europe. So they had a tall task. The Soviets didn't pretend there was a democracy in Eastern Europe. They just said, we own it. The U.S. said, there is no democracy in Western Europe and we own it. But we have to create the illusion of democracy in order for our actions to appear to align with our ideological rhetoric. So the ideological rhetoric was, we are for the right thing. We oppose totalitarianism, and we are for everybody, democracy, freedom, independence. That was the rhetoric. The reality didn't align with that rhetoric, because the reality was they had made a deal with the Soviets, with Stalin, and they were going to do the same damn things that Stalin was going to do. But he was going to be honest about it. I'm keeping Eastern Europe. Okay, I'm keeping Western Europe. Fine, let's shake. That's the deal. All right, I'm not going to pretend that there's democracy in Eastern Europe. But the Americans were like, well, we kind of claim that we're for democracy, and that's bullshit. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to claim that there's democracy. And that's what they did. There was the illusion of democracy, independence, and sovereignty in Western Europe. The illusion didn't exist in Eastern Europe. Okay? And what happened? As there became confrontations, as the US empire started losing power, as it saw the rise of China and Russia, right? It's like, holy shit, China and Russia are becoming very powerful. And our vassals, our puppets in Europe are doing business with these people, which is going to make them even stronger. Now, if they don't do it, they're going to suffer like hell. But I don't care. Their job is to suffer like hell. So they just decided we can no longer afford, and keep in mind, this is clear if you think about it. The US empire decided we can no longer afford the luxury of maintaining the illusion of democracy in Western Europe. We can't, but that was a luxury. It was a luxury that we afforded the people in charge and afforded the Europeans. We can't afford that luxury anymore. We cannot. I'm sorry. So from now on, we got to come clean. And that's when they said to the leaders of Europe, that's it. You're going to destroy your economy. You're going to impoverish your people because that's what we told you to do. And the leaders of Europe already knew. See, the people, the elite ruling class knew that the illusion of democracy was all a fraud. That's why they have no problem. That's why when they say to these leaders, hey, we want you to just wipe out, to deindustrialize your country. We want you to wipe it out and turn it into a third world shithole. The leaders of the Europeans already know the deal. So what they do is they simply like, yes, of course. So, I mean, yeah, sure. They know that they're going to end up in a villa outside of Miami. What do they give a damn? So, unfortunately for the Europeans, the illusion that you have independence and sovereignty has worn out. They don't need it anymore. So it's gone. And the illusion here is gone too. I mean, look, that same thing here. There was the illusion of democracy. How do you have a democracy when you shoot the president in the head? That ain't much of a democracy, right? So there was the illusion of democracy right here. That's evaporating too. Now they are like, look, we can't afford Trump winning again. So the status quo, the system has to act to stop Trump from winning. And we don't care because, you know, how totalitarians get to the point where they're like, we got so much power, there's nothing you can do. Who cares? See, that's the way they're looking at the American people now. It's like, look, we got a lot of power. We got a certain element within a large element within the American people that are pure sheep that we can tell them to, you know, jump and they'll say how high. We don't have to worry about them. So we are not going to maintain the illusion. We'll just very, very lightly maintain the illusion of democracy. We'll still claim, we'll give you the democratic rhetoric, but we're going to do everything we need to make sure that the candidate we want to win is going to win. So that's where we are right now. Democracy is out the window. Good news. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see everybody who's on here smash the like button and smash the like button and please become a member of my Rockfin. They literally have been censoring videos in YouTube, shutting them down. I did a video where I just talked about how screwed the people are in Europe and that they need to reach out for independence and sovereignty, and Facebook censored it and erased it. Luckily, I still got it on rockfin.com. So you can go to Rockfin and see all my videos there. Please become a member, ROKFIN, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. What I would really appreciate, here's something you could really do to help the channel. On Rockfin, it's free to join, or you can become a subscriber for $9.99 a month. Anybody who could do that, I would really appreciate it. Number one, if you could become a $9.99 subscriber on Rockfin, you don't have to. You can do it for free if you can't afford it. I would really appreciate that. As you can see scrolling across the screen, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. At Garland Nixon on Twitter. I've got a Patreon. I appreciate anybody who can help the channel out doing patreon.com/Garland Nixon. Of course, PayPal, garlandin@gmail.com. And I love Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffees.com/Garland in, and they stuck an H on the end. I don't know what that's for. Maybe that was a designate. Maybe that's my CIA, designated name, Garland in H or something. As they're following me around and watching everything I'm doing, they stick an H into my name just to aggravate me, because that's what they do. I certainly appreciate the Rockfin people. Wow, we've got people that are doing tips. So today we're going to start with the Rockfin tips. We got tips from Rockfin. And the first one says, Glenn Englehorn says, here's a question I know the answer to. Did NASA destroy the technologies that sent men to the moon and back 6 times? Anyone else smelling a rat in the kitchen? Okay. I don't know about that. Cryosynth. Oh, that's awesome. And a tip and another tip from JVB. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Hey, Daniela Ferreira. Holy crap! I finally caught this live. Well, awesome, awesome, awesome. And I'm going to even say thanks to Daniela. I'm going to, as we're speaking, I'm going to reply. How's that? Anything else? There are plenty of people out there with the money to file lawsuits. Oh, people are talking about lawsuits. Let me add this. So I'll add this. I'm glad I forgot something before I get to the super chats. But anybody who can, I'd certainly appreciate super chats. Lawsuits. If in fact we had a valid court, what court system in the U.S. if it wasn't fully captured by the oligarchs and by the status quo system? That would be a good question, because here's what you would say. What we've been told is that the social media suppression of speech is not a violation of the First Amendment, because it's not the government, it's a private corporation. There is a case I would look up if I were you, called Pruneyard versus something or other. It's a California case, Pruneyard, where there was a discussion about that, and it came out that they finally decided that Pruneyard was shopping center was in fact a public space where people met and talked about stuff. Therefore, you should be afforded your First Amendment rights at the shopping center. My point being this: I think the legal argument that these social media companies are intertwined with the government, are acting on behalf of the government, therefore they should be held to First Amendment standards, is the strength for that argument is growing. And I think this is another powerful piece of evidence to show that the court should rule in that way. However, because I have as much faith in the court system as I do in the FBI, I don't know where that would work. But I think that's a valid discussion. All right, let's see if we got any super chats. I know here's one. Let's roll. Jao Wu says, Twitter's civic integrity policy for the midterms is going to be a trial run for the presidential election. The Disinformation Governance Board never went away, just being less comically obvious. Absolutely, absolutely. Look, they're knuckling down. And the other thing about that, going after the Uhuru movement, was so that now they can start that crap again. The Russians are interfering. Like, the Russians don't have enough. Like, they're really concerned. I mean, literally, they said that the Uhuru movement was working for the Russians when they ran somebody for mayor of St. Petersburg in Florida, and they got 1.67% of the vote. Like, really? Like, Vladimir Putin's around, like, there's a lot of things we could do to really upset the apple cart. But here's what I'm thinking. If we could just get maybe upwards of 2% of the vote in St. Petersburg, Florida, my God, the American system would fall apart as we know it. It's preposterous and absurd. But it helps to build a narrative. So now after they go after them, they haven't charged anybody, of course. It was just where to go. Think about this. They raided the Uhuru movement and said that they were working with the Russians. Where's that story now? See anything else from it? They haven't charged a single person there. They busted in their house. They busted those people's door down. People who were exercising their constitutional rights busted their door down, grabbed an 80-year-old man, set him out there, zip-tied his hands, took their stuff. None of them been charged with a crime. None of them, because they haven't committed any crimes. They were attacked, and now they can use that particular move and say, see, now we told you the Russians are trying to interfere again. Why? They're running people for St. Petersburg's mayor. Next thing you know, they'll be running for the mayor of Sheboygan. Sparky says, interim Attorney General Sally Yates replaced Chris May at the Atlanta law firm King and Spalding when Ray became FBI director. Small world. Yes, isn't it a small world? Isn't it funny how they always do that? Let's see, anybody else? Anything else in the way of super chats? We'll go down. We're looking for super chats. We are looking for super chats. Sparky already got that. Good piece of information. Thanks a lot, Sparky. Jao Wu, we already got great piece of information from Jao Wu. What we got here? We got some more. Sparky says, Europeans were tame in the 80s and fully domesticated in the 90s. American went through the same in the 20s and 2000s. You are correct. Good point, Sparky. Christian, Northern New Jersey says, Great Stream Garland, any thoughts on the increased attack on farmers and food sovereignty? Well, I don't know. One could argue that they're the Malthusianists are like saying there's a little too much food to feed these people, and we cut back on the food, we cut back on the people, huh? So they're going to be facing, every revolution faces a counter revolution, and right now, what we're seeing is the status quo trying to introduce a revolution. They're trying to upset whether it's democratic principles, whether it's constitutional principles. They're simply saying we're going to take over everything and nobody's going to be allowed to say anything that we don't want them to say. That's what they're doing. I do believe there will be that they're going to get but so far with it. As this Ukraine thing goes bad, I think they're going to double down on it. But I do believe that there will be a counter revolution. I'm not saying it's violent or nonviolent. I don't know. Could be philosophical, but I do believe there will be some form of a counter revolution against it here in Europe and in the United States, some form. And again, I'm not saying people are running through the street with guns and muskets and tri-cornered hats, that kind of revolution, because that wasn't a revolution. First of all, that wasn't, they used the word, the revolution of 70, the American Revolution. No. You're not going to find a revolution where at the end of the revolution, the oligarchs have written the laws and they've written a law that says only oligarchs can vote. That ain't a revolution, okay? Who was it? Let's see. The land owning, at the end of the revolution, there were still slaves, and the land owning oligarchs were the ones who wrote the rules that said only land owning oligarchs could vote. Now, that ain't a revolution, my friend. There was a war, there was a colonial things going on, but that is far from the definition of a revolutionary activity. So let's keep going. Anything else? Oh, we got more super chats. Arnie Ann says, Section 230 of Title 47 prevents suing social media. Look, the social media is part of the government. A, you can't sue them. And B, if you did, you lose because it's part of the government. They don't want you to know that. They invented that stuff. They invented all that stuff. That's all Defense Department technology. All right, let's see what we have. Beer and Flies, a super sticker. Thanks a lot. Beer and Flies is awesome. I really appreciate the help, Beer and Flies. I appreciate everybody. Let's see if we have anything else over here on Denver Attorney says Hunter Biden seems on Rockfin. Hunter Biden seems as dirty as they come. I don't question the laptop contents. The weird detail of all this is the laptop shop owner is a guy with 4 first names, John Paul Mac Isaac. Just saying that's weird. Good old John Paul Mac Isaac. Yeah, that's pretty wild. People have said that I have 2 last names, Nixon and Garland, because people see Garland as a last name. And the weird, you want to hear something weird? You know how you go in and you say, yeah, blah, I like this. And they say, your name is Bill Smith. They say, okay, Mr. Smith. People always say Mr. in the last name. Yes, Mr. Smith. Okay, well, nice to meet you, Mr. Smith. Well, I go in, what's your name? Garland Nixon. Okay, Mr. Garland. Why do people always say Mr. Garland? That's my first name. That's weird. It's almost like the old Saturday Night Live Mr. Bill. Oh, no, it's Mr. Garland. So I'm not Mr. Bill. I'm Mr. Garland. How's that? And that just sounds weird. Mr. Garland. I remember when I used to DJ and I was DJing and I remember the stupidest I felt. So some people had hired me to DJ in this big event and it was on the radio and all this kinds of stuff. And this other girl was and she gave her and she didn't know what my name was for me for DJing. So she says, yes, it'll be so-and-so DJ, whatever. And Mr. Garland. So it was on the radio, Mr. Garland. And I thought, God, nobody's going to come. Who's want to come to an event? Who's the DJ? Mr. Garland. So I called her. I'm like, hey, could you change? She was like, oh, it's too late. And this thing like played all weekend. Hey, it's an event. Blah, blah, blah. With Mr. Garland on the ones and twos. I'm like, that was so embarrassing. I hope that never happens again. Good old Mr. Garland. At any rate, yeah, Sheriff Garland. That's it. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. I guess that's it. Wow, 250 people. Don't forget, smash that like button, as Alex Cristoforo says. Don't forget, if I got everybody, 253 people, please, I don't want anybody watching this who does not go to Rockfin and click on Rockfin and my rockfin.com/Garland Nixon and become either a member or a subscriber. If you could afford that $9.99 a month, that would really help. That would be a great help. It really helps me to keep that channel and keep that channel strong, because sooner or later this channel may be out the window, and that's where we need to kind of focus. So rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. If you can become a $9.99 subscriber, thanks a lot. If not, just join and watch as much as watch everything. Also, being a subscriber allows you to see the premium content on my channel and everybody else's channel on Rockfin. Rockfin's great, great. All us crazy conspiracy theorists are on Rockfin. That's what you'll like, Rockfin. All of we crazy conspiracy theorists are there. And the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is about 6 months. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Everything's streaming across for Buy Me a Coffee. I think that's the coolest name. I like Buy Me a Coffee, but Patreon is good because it's a monthly thing. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll be back soon. Anything else? Jennifer Lynn says this is this. Good night, great gamer. Oh no, I'm being called gamer. I've been called Garner. I've been called Garfield, Garlic. I mean, people have garbled everything up. But now it's gamer. That's good enough. I'm just playing with the Jenny Lynn. Jenny Lynn. That's Jenny Lynn. That sounds like a Petticoat Junction kind of name for those of you who know what that means. Jenny Lynn. What is it? Betty Joe, Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, and Jenny Lynn. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Oh, what does this say? Gamer and Ganja for Life 07 says, no, Garland, it was me. Ganja for life, my kind of person. Games and ganja. I've never been much into games, I'll tell you that. All right, thanks a lot, you all. Have a great day. Peace. Garland is out.